Level 1. The Desperate Dreamer. John is 28 years old and his entire physical existence currently smells like a tragic mixture of stale fast food grease, unwashed laundry, and burning cheap plastic. He is living out of the back seat of a dented 2008 Honda Civic parked in the darkest corner of a fluorescent-lit Walmart parking lot. He is violently shivering under a $5 fleece blanket while he stares at the glowing, cracked screen of a 5-year-old laptop that is currently running a core temperature hot enough to fry an egg. He has not slept in an actual bed in 21 agonizing days. His diet consists entirely of crushed saltines and lukewarm tap water stolen from public restrooms. His 3 high-interest credit cards are completely, hopelessly maxed out. His personal checking account is overdrawn by exactly $412, and Amazon Web Services has just sent him a final, automated, red flag email threatening to completely shut down his cloud hosting servers in exactly 48 hours. If those servers go dark, the proprietary artificial intelligence application he has spent the last 2 years of his life agonizingly coding dies instantly. If the app dies, the grand, delusionally optimistic Silicon Valley dream dies with it. And then if the dream dies, John has to pack his garbage bags, drive halfway across the country back to a suffocating suburb in Ohio, move into his parents' damp, unfinished basement, and admit to every single person who ever doubted him that he is a spectacular, miserable, utterly irredeemable failure. He absolutely cannot let that happen. He just needs $50,000. In the tech world, that is a pathetic rounding error for the ultra-rich. It is a tiny, insignificant, microscopic lifeline that will just keep the server lights on while he frantically patches the catastrophic, fundamental bugs buried deep in his backend code. Because right now, the revolutionary neural network he aggressively promised the world would disrupt the entire global tech industry crashes violently, throwing up an endless wall of red syntax errors every single time he presses the home button. Operating on pure adrenaline and blind desperation, John manages to secure a pitch meeting with a local mid-tier angel investor. He scrubs his face with harsh paper towels in a gas station bathroom and walks into the man's aggressively air-conditioned, unnecessarily massive office. This guy made his localized fortune flipping commercial real estate in strip malls in the late 90s. He does not know the actual technical difference between a Python script and a garden snake, but he religiously watches business reality television shows and heavily fancies himself a modern, cutthroat tech visionary. John sits across from his massive, intimidating mahogany desk, surrounded by tacky golf trophies. He opens his overheating laptop. He starts the pitch. He actively projects an aura of absolute, unshakable, predatory confidence. He confidently tells this man that his complex algorithm is currently processing tens of thousands of complex, encrypted data transactions every single minute. He strategically weaponizes meaningless corporate buzzwords like machine learning, scalable infrastructure, blockchain integration, and disruptive synergy. The investor leans back in his squeaky leather chair, steeples his manicured fingers together, and casually asks for John's current, verified active user numbers. John's stomach violently drops into his shoes. He hesitates for a fraction of a millisecond. The real, mathematically factual number of active users on the platform is exactly 14. And 12 of those 14 are fake burner accounts he meticulously created himself using wildly different proxy email addresses just to desperately test if the login screen actually functioned. He swallows the massive lump of pure, unadulterated panic rising in his throat. He looks this man dead in his eyes. He deliberately does not blink. We are currently tracking at 10,000 verified daily active users, with a highly conservative, mathematically proven 30% month-over-month growth rate. The massive, catastrophic lie slips out of his mouth with terrifying sociopathic ease. He immediately, subconsciously justifies it to himself. He tells his conscience that it is not really a malicious lie. It is just an optimistic forward projection. It is the exact inevitable number of users he absolutely will have once the broken code actually functions properly. The investor nods slowly, completely, blindly buying the unearned, manufactured confidence radiating from John's rigid posture. He reaches into his heavy desk drawer, pulls out a leather-bound checkbook, and casually writes him a check for $50,000. John walks out of that oppressive glass building, steps into the blinding, unforgiving afternoon sun, and his unwashed hands are shaking so violently he drops his car keys directly onto the burning pavement. He has just crossed a definitive, concrete moral line that he can never, ever uncross. But as he stares down at the wet ink on that beautiful piece of paper, he realizes one cold, hard, undeniable truth. He is not going to be homeless tonight. Level 2, the Fake It Till You Make It founder. It has been exactly 2 months since the check cleared. The $50,000 is completely, astonishingly gone. It turns out that renting a trendy, exposed brick corporate co-working space with nitro cold brew on tap and hiring 3 desperate, starry-eyed junior software developers burns through operational cash faster than a wildfire raging through dry brush. These 3 young, aggressively naive kids look at John like he is the undeniable second coming of Steve Jobs. They hang on his every single fabricated word. They are entirely, hopelessly relying on him for their basic survival. They just signed binding 12-month leases on wildly overpriced, tiny city apartments based entirely on the generous, utterly fictional six-figure salaries he confidently promised them in their digital offer letters, and his revolutionary, world-changing application. It still does not work. Not even a little bit. The core machine learning model is absolute, irredeemable garbage. It outputs nothing but garbled gibberish. It cannot process a simple, foundational data query without timing out and crashing the entire local server. John is completely, entirely out of financial runway. He is running on fumes and lies. But through a sheer, unbelievable stroke of desperate, late-night LinkedIn networking, he manages to score an exclusive pitch meeting with a top-tier, fiercely legitimate Silicon Valley venture capital firm. They are heavily interested. They want to lead his $2 million seed round. This is the absolute big leagues. But there is a massive, terrifying, potentially fatal catch. The senior managing partners do not just want a slide deck. They want a live, in-person, fully functional demonstration of the revolutionary technology working in real time. John locks himself inside his messy apartment for 3 agonizing, sleep-deprived days and nights. He is not fixing the broken back-end code. He abandons the engineering entirely. Instead, he is actively, maliciously hard-coding a completely fake visual simulation. He builds a beautifully sleek, heavily animated user interface using basic front-end tricks that looks exactly like it is processing live, immensely complex data streams, but every single button press just triggers a pre-written, perfectly timed, incredibly smooth graphic animation. It is a digital movie prop. It is an intricate, highly polished illusion designed to fool rich people. He flies out to Sand Hill Road on a cheap budget airline. He sits in a pristine, intimidating glass boardroom surrounded by actual, verified billionaires wearing expensive Patagonia vests and sipping imported sparkling water. He smiles a perfectly practiced, relaxed smile. He confidently presses the enter button on his keyboard. The fake, pre-programmed loading bar fills up perfectly. The hard-coded animation runs flawlessly, spitting out fabricated data points exactly on cue. The seasoned venture capitalists are utterly mesmerized by the sleekness of the design and the perceived speed of the back-end processing. They shake his sweating hand. They tell him to his face that he is a generational genius. 3 torturous days later, John is sitting in a crowded, noisy coffee shop when he gets the loud push notification on his cracked phone screen. Incoming wire transfer, $2 million. The dopamine hit is absolutely staggering, almost physically violent. It hits his exhausted bloodstream like a massive surge of liquid electricity. He physically cannot breathe for 10 seconds. He did not just survive the impossible week, he utterly broke the game and won. He tells himself, again, desperately clutching his coffee cup, that he will use this massive injection of $2 million to hire real, Ivy League engineers to actually build the technology he just brazenly faked. But deep down, in the absolute darkest, most cynical corner of his rotting mind, a terrifying, insidious realization takes permanent root. Lying directly to incredibly wealthy people is infinitely easier, faster, and vastly more profitable than actually doing the grueling, impossible engineering. He is no longer just a guy exaggerating on a resume. He is now committing active, premeditated, massive corporate fraud. Level 3. The paranoid executive. John's entirely fake company has violently exploded overnight. He now has 50 full-time, highly paid employees officially on the corporate payroll. His sprawling new downtown office features custom ping-pong tables, catered organic vegan lunches, $1,000 ergonomic desk chairs, and a burning, highly acidic pit of relentless, suffocating anxiety in his stomach that never, ever goes away, not even when he sleeps. He is currently paying everyone's exorbitant, inflated salaries entirely with the venture capital money. But the underlying, foundational product remains a fragile, terrifying house of cards waiting for a stiff breeze. And the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen to a fraudster is starting to happen. His newly hired, brilliantly educated lead engineers are starting to ask very dangerous, highly specific, extremely technical questions. They want to deeply understand why the back-end data architecture does not mathematically match the front-end user outputs. They are aggressively demanding full administrative access to the core repository to optimize the machine learning model that they think exists. John absolutely cannot let them see it. Ever. Because if anyone with actual, foundational technical literacy looks at the full source code repository, they will instantly, undeniably realize that the heavily marketed, proprietary artificial intelligence is actually just a massive team of grossly underpaid, exhausted, outsourced workers in a warehouse in the Philippines. Corporate survival now requires extreme, draconian, deeply unethical measures. John becomes completely, clinically obsessed with secrecy. He systematically restructures the entire corporate hierarchy, aggressively and deliberately siloing his engineering teams. He issues a strict corporate decree that Team A is explicitly, legally forbidden from communicating or sharing files with Team B. He secretly installs highly aggressive, invisible monitoring software on every single company-issued laptop to silently track keystrokes, monitor screen time, and read every single private Slack message sent within the building. He single-handedly, systematically creates a deeply toxic, utterly terrifying corporate culture based on absolute paranoia and fear. When a brilliant senior developer absolutely refuses to drop his persistent, logical questions about the impossible data flow, John does not just quietly fire him. He aggressively calls him into his glass office late on a Friday afternoon, brutally terminates him on the spot without cause, and violently slides a brutal, ironclad, legally terrifying non-disclosure agreement across the heavy desk. He looks the shocked engineer directly in the eye and tells him, in a dead, emotionless voice, that if he ever breathes a single solitary word of what he saw inside this building, John will personally deploy a ruthless army of corporate litigators to tie him up in federal court until his grandchildren are bankrupt and living on the street. He watches the raw, sickening fear wash over the developer's pale face as his shaking hand signs the paper. As the man leaves, John does not feel like a visionary disruptor anymore. He feels exactly like a heavily armed, deeply paranoid prison warden guarding a completely empty, echoing, hollow vault. Level 4. The Master Manipulator. The basic, unavoidable mathematics of massive corporate overhead are rapidly catching up to John's lies. The absurd, staggering financial cost of maintaining a 50-person theatrical charade in a premium downtown office space is bleeding his corporate accounts completely dry. He is currently burning through an astonishing $1.5 million every single month just to keep the fluorescent lights on and the massive lie alive. If he runs out of cash, the powerful venture capital investors will forcefully, legally demand a brutal, independent financial audit. The very second a licensed forensic accountant looks at his server logs, his hidden payroll expenses, and his hollow bank accounts, the entire multi-million-dollar illusion shatters into dust, and John goes directly to a federal penitentiary. To survive this impending, unavoidable disaster, John does not just need a little bit of bridge money. He needs a massive, insurmountable war chest. He needs a $50 million Series B funding round from gigantic, cutthroat institutional investors. But ruthless hedge funds and massive institutional private equity firms do not just look at a shiny, fake app demonstration and hand over cash. They demand raw, unedited data. They want mathematically verified financial ledgers. They want to see hard, undeniable, rapidly compounding quarterly revenue. John has now moved way past simply faking lines of software code. He is entering the realm of high-level financial forgery. It is 2 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. He is sitting completely alone in his sprawling, silent corner office, the pale blue glow of his 3 massive monitors illuminating the cold, terrified sweat pouring down his face and soaking his designer shirt. He opens Adobe Acrobat Pro. He carefully pulls up his actual, legitimate, pathetically small corporate banking statements downloaded from Silicon Valley Bank. His hand trembles slightly as he clicks his mouse on the total monthly deposit line. He hits the backspace key. He deletes the real, pathetic 5-figure number. He carefully types in a massively inflated, completely fabricated 8-figure number, meticulously matching the exact proprietary font, kerning, and pixel density of the original banking document. He is systematically fabricating phantom revenue metrics completely out of thin air. He spends hours creating dozens of incredibly detailed, fake customer invoices from shell corporations that he personally registered online in Delaware using a fake name and a registered agent in a strip mall. He is actively, undeniably, and systematically committing federal wire fraud on a massive, highly documented scale. He prints these beautifully forged, highly fraudulent PDF documents on thick, expensive paper and hands them directly to his eager, aggressively loyal, tragically clueless chief financial officer who beautifully packages them into a glossy 90-page, professionally bound investment pitch deck. The ruthless institutional investors look at the fake, perfectly formatted numbers. They do not see a massive, clumsy crime. They see a hypergrowth, once-in-a-generation economic miracle. They wire John $50 million without a second thought. He has just successfully committed the perfect, utterly undetectable white-collar crime, and the entire high finance world is giving him a standing ovation for his sheer brilliance. Level 5. The Unicorn Visionary. John has actually done it. He has reached the absolute undeniable peak of the Silicon Valley mountain. His company, built entirely on air and lies, is officially valued at over $1 billion. He is officially, permanently, a Silicon Valley unicorn. His aggressively airbrushed, professionally contoured face is plastered on the front cover of Forbes magazine. He is wearing a carefully chosen, minimalist black turtleneck to subliminally invoke the aura of tech royalty. The bold, massive headline printed beneath his face breathlessly calls him a generational disruptor and the future of artificial intelligence. He owns a sprawling, minimalist, $20 million glass mansion hidden deep in the Hollywood Hills. He aggressively drives a roaring matte black Porsche 911 GT3 through the winding canyon roads. He is personally invited to exclusive, high-security galas where powerful politicians, famous actors, and legendary investors desperately try to shake his hand and get in on his next funding round. But his daily waking reality is a suffocating, paralyzing, terrifying nightmare. His massive, highly publicized on-paper net worth is tied entirely to unvested, tightly locked company stock. He is incredibly, unfathomably paper-rich, but completely, hopelessly trapped in a liquidity nightmare. He cannot sell a single share of his own inflated stock to get actual usable cash without triggering mandatory, highly public SEC filings, which would instantly spook the entire market, trigger a mass sell-off, and tank the stock price to absolute zero in an afternoon. And then, without warning, the structural floor of his entire fabricated life violently gives way. His absolute brightest, most relentless lead software engineer, a quiet woman who never bought into the corporate cult, manages to quietly, systematically bypass the complex, layered security firewalls he frantically built around the hidden shadow servers. She accesses the highly restricted administrative logs. She clearly sees the blatantly forged, manual revenue inputs. She sees the completely empty back-end repositories. She mathematically realizes the proprietary AI does not exist and never existed. She walks into his office, calmly closes the heavy, soundproof glass door and tells him flatly, with ice in her veins, that she has downloaded everything to an encrypted flash drive and is going straight to the federal authorities first thing in the morning. Pure, unadulterated, blinding panic hits John like a physical blow to the chest. He literally cannot breathe. The expensive glass walls of the massive office feel like they are rapidly shrinking, crushing his ribs. He absolutely cannot let her leave this room. He frantically, desperately offers her a massive pile of cash, equity, anything to stay quiet, but he suddenly remembers with sickening, horrifying clarity that he does not actually have any real liquid capital to give her. His wealth is a ghost. He is forced to make the absolute most desperate, incredibly dangerous move of his entire miserable life. He secretly leverages his highly public status to approach a shadowy, deeply underground syndicate of predatory, incredibly dangerous private lenders operating out of a heavily guarded warehouse in Nevada. He takes out a staggering $5 million astronomically high-interest, entirely off-the-books personal loan using his absolutely worthless, entirely fraudulent, unvested startup stock as the collateral. He quietly wires the millions of dollars directly into the engineer's personal, offshore bank account. It is a massive, highly illegal hush money settlement disguised perfectly through corrupt human resources channels as a premium executive severance package for structural redundancy. She takes the massive payout of blood money, signs the ultimate draconian, legally bulletproof non-disclosure agreement, and completely disappears from the industry. He has successfully bought her silence for now, but John is now personally, violently millions of dollars in debt to extremely dangerous, highly connected criminals who do not care about his Forbes magazine cover, his fake valuation, or the law. If he defaults, they will not sue him, they will break his legs, or worse. Level 6. The Cornered Animal. The walls are rapidly, violently closing in from every single conceivable direction. An obscure, relentlessly stubborn, highly analytical financial journalist who specializes entirely in exposing short-selling corporate research starts noticing tiny, mathematical, highly suspicious discrepancies in John's heavily manicured public corporate filings. The fundamental, unchangeable math of his confidently claimed user acquisition costs simply does not mathematically align with his aggressively reported, wildly inflated quarterly revenue. It is a tiny, microscopic loose thread on a massive sweater, but the journalist starts aggressively pulling on it. John receives a polite, highly professional, but utterly devastating email from this journalist formally asking for an on-the-record comment regarding several specific accounting irregularities involving the exact shell companies John created in Delaware. 2 days later, his company's highly paid general counsel walks into his office without knocking. The older lawyer's face is entirely devoid of color, sweating profusely. He informs John in a shaking voice that the United States Securities and Exchange Commission has officially, formally opened a massive preliminary investigative inquiry into his specific financial practices. They have issued a binding federal subpoena demanding all internal server logs, raw financial ledgers, and unedited executive emails dating back to the company's inception. Pure, unadulterated, primal terror completely takes over John's entire central nervous system. He is no longer a visionary CEO pacing a boardroom. He is a cornered, wildly desperate animal violently trapped in a burning building with all the exits permanently blocked. He waits in his office until exactly 2 a.m. when the building is completely empty and the security guards are on patrol. He He frantically logs into the master administrative portal with trembling, sweaty fingers and orders the permanent, unrecoverable, hard drive wiping deletion of all internal corporate Slack channels and private email hosting servers. He personally, frantically carries heavy cardboard boxes overflowing with physical financial ledgers and printed, forged bank statements down the back stairwell into the dark, rain-soaked alley behind the office building. He dumps them into a rusty metal trash can, douses them in lighter fluid, and sets them on fire, numbly watching the glowing ashes of his empire float up into the pitch-black night sky, staining his incredibly expensive Italian leather shoes with soot. He realizes with cold, terrifying clarity that he needs a believable fall guy. He starts quietly, maliciously drafting highly specific, deeply incriminating emails. He meticulously backdates them deep in the administrative system by several months, aggressively attempting to mathematically frame his entirely clueless, trusting CFO for the missing syndicate funds, the meticulously forged PDF documents, and the massive phantom revenue. He is actively, intentionally destroying federal evidence. He is aggressively, legally obstructing a massive federal justice investigation. Every single desperate, frantic move he makes to desperately cover his tracks only digs his inevitable, concrete grave 10 feet deeper. His hair is literally falling out in clumps in the shower. He is violently vomiting from pure stress every single morning before he puts on his suit. He is a walking ghost, nervously haunting the halls of his own fraudulent, doomed empire. Level 7, the federal target and the crash. The desperate, chaotic cover-up completely and spectacularly shatters. The financial journalist drops the massive, highly anticipated exposé online at exactly 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. The devastating article is a brutal, airtight, 50-page forensic teardown of John's entire miserable, fraudulent operation. It aggressively exposes absolutely everything. The completely fake, hard-coded technology, the heavily exploited, underpaid outsourced labor in the Philippines, the meticulously forged PDF bank statements, the massive phantom corporate revenue, the specific addresses of the fake Delaware shell companies. It is all laid out in agonizing, undeniable, perfectly researched, mathematically proven detail. The internet absolutely explodes in real time. Financial Twitter is violently tearing John to shreds, memeing his Forbes cover into oblivion. His once arrogant venture capital investors enter a state of blinding, litigious panic. In a matter of exactly 4 chaotic hours, his heavily lauded, heavily manipulated billion-dollar corporate valuation violently plummets to absolute, undeniable zero. The furious board of directors holds a screaming emergency meeting without him and permanently, digitally locks him out of his own company's systems, seizing his corporate accounts. It is 6 a.m. on a quiet, overcast Thursday. John is sitting completely still on the edge of the incredibly expensive, custom-made mattress in his massive, echoing, utterly empty Hollywood mansion. He has not slept in 4 agonizing days. The complete silence in the massive house is absolutely, crushingly deafening. He is just numbly staring at the wall, waiting for the inevitable end. Suddenly, the heavy, reinforced oak front door is violently, explosively breached. The terrifying, deafening sound of splintering wood and shattered glass violently echoes through the pristine, cold marble hallway. Dozens of heavily armed federal agents wearing dark tactical body armor and bright yellow FBI windbreakers violently swarm into his home, sweeping the rooms with mounted flashlights. They scream at him at the top of their lungs to get face down on the hardwood floor. He feels a heavy boot on his back. They systematically, ruthlessly seize his unlocked phone, his encrypted laptop, his frozen offshore bank accounts, and the keys to his matte black Porsche. John is violently shoved into the cramped, cold back seat of a black government SUV. His wrists are throbbing intensely from the biting cold steel of the heavy handcuffs secured tightly behind his back. He numbly stares out the heavily tinted, bulletproof window as his massive, fraudulent mansion fades away into the distance, permanently out of reach. He is entirely, irreversibly bankrupt. He is personally, dangerously millions of dollars in debt to extremely violent underground lenders who will actively hunt him down the absolute second he ever gets out. And as the crushing, inescapable reality of his situation finally crushes the remaining breath out of his lungs, he realizes the absolute hardest, most devastating truth of all. The fake-it-till-you-make-it game is permanently, irrevocably over. John is facing a mandatory, unpleadable 20 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary for massive, coordinated wire fraud, international securities fraud, and the blatant, documented obstruction of a federal justice investigation. His entire legacy is a massive, pathetic punchline in business school textbooks. His life is completely, entirely over. And this time, there is absolutely no one left in the entire world for him to pitch.